The locker room was empty except for us. Steam still clung to the air from the showers, and I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears as Lucas stepped closer. His jersey half undone, his eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Tell me you don't feel this," he whispered, his voice rough and desperate. "Tell me I'm imagining it, and I'll walk away right now." But I couldn't say the words, because it would have been a lie. That moment, that's where everything changed. But to understand how we got there, I need to take you back to the beginning. Back to when Lucas Brennan was just the football captain everyone worshipped from afar. And I was the quiet scholarship kid who never expected him to know my name. My name is Adrian Cole, and I've never been the type to stand out. At Westridge University, that was almost a survival skill. I kept my head down, focused on my classes, worked my part-time job at the campus library, and tried not to draw attention to the fact that I didn't belong in the same world as most of these students. They wore designer clothes and talked about summer homes in the Hamptons. I wore thrift-store jeans and counted quarters to do laundry. But Lucas Brennan? He existed in a completely different stratosphere. Captain of the football team, pre-law major, son of a state senator, Lucas was the kind of guy who seemed engineered for success. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that always looked effortlessly perfect, and a smile that could light up a stadium. Everyone knew him. Everyone wanted to be near him. I never thought I'd be one of those people. It started in September, during the first week of our junior year. I was in the library during my shift, reshelving books in the economics section, when I heard a commotion near the study tables. A group of football players had taken over the space, their loud voices echoing through the normally quiet building. I recognized most of them hard not to when their faces were plastered all over campus, but my eyes kept drifting to Lucas. He sat at the center of the group, laughing at something one of his teammates said, but there was something different about him up close, something softer. While the others were rowdy and obnoxious, Lucas seemed almost reserved, like he was performing a role he'd mastered, but didn't entirely believe in. Library guy. One of the players called out to me, "You got any books on sports psychology?" I walked over, professional smile in place. "We have a few. I can show you where he's not asking for himself," another player interrupted with a smirk. "Captain's got a paper due. Needs to look smart for once." Lucas shot his teammate a look, not quite annoyed, but close. Then his eyes met mine, and I felt something shift in my chest. They were lighter than I expected. Not quite brown, not quite gold. Amber, maybe. And they held an apology I didn't understand. "Sorry about them," he said, his voice lower than his teammates. "If you could point me in the right direction, I'd appreciate it." I nodded, not trusting my voice, and led him through the stacks. The other players didn't follow, their attention already drifting to their phones and whatever game they were watching highlights from. It was just Lucas and me walking between shelves that smelled like old paper and possibility. "Sports psychology is here," I said, gesturing to a section. "We have Weinberg, Gill, a few others. What's your paper on?" "Performance anxiety and team dynamics." He pulled a book off the shelf, flipped through it absently, trying to figure out how to write about it without sounding like I'm diagnosing my own team. I smiled despite myself. That would be awkward, right? He looked up, and there was that softness again. That sense of someone hiding just beneath the surface. "I'm Lucas, by the way. I know." The words came out before I could stop them, and I felt heat creep up my neck. I mean, everyone knows. Football captain and all. He laughed. But it wasn't the cocky sound I expected. It was almost self-deprecating. "Yeah, that follows me around. What's your name?" "Adrian. Adrian." He repeated it like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. "You work here a lot?" 4 days a week. Need to pay for books somehow." Something flickered across his face. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. "Scholarship student?" I stiffened, waiting for the judgment, the subtle condescension I'd gotten used to. But it never came. Lucas just nodded like I'd confirmed something he'd already suspected and respected. "Me too," he said quietly. "Football scholarship. If I don't maintain my GPA and performance, I lose everything." No. I stared at him, genuinely surprised. "But I thought your dad's a senator." "He is." Lucas's jaw tightened slightly. Which means I'm expected to succeed on my own merit, not his money. He made that very clear when I came here. There was a weight to those words, a story I didn't know but could sense. We stood there in the silence of the library. Two people who suddenly seemed less like strangers and more like fellow travelers on the same difficult road.
Oh, well,
I said eventually. If you need help finding anything else, let me know. He smiled, a real smile this time. Not the practiced one I'd seen him use with his teammates. Thanks, Adrian. I will. I didn't expect to see Lucas again after that. Guys like him didn't usually remember guys like me. But the next week he came back to the library. Alone this time, without the entourage of teammates. He found me at the circulation desk and set down a stack of books. Returning these, he said, and I was wondering, do you have anything on constitutional law? Specifically, Fourth Amendment cases. I processed his returns and led him to the legal studies section. This time, we talked more. About classes, professors, the weird pressure of being a scholarship student among kids who'd never worried about money. Lucas was easy to talk to, surprisingly so. He listened when I spoke, asked follow-up questions, made me feel like my thoughts actually mattered. It became a pattern. Every few days, Lucas would show up during my shift. Sometimes he needed books. Sometimes he just sat at one of the study tables and worked on assignments while I worked. We'd take breaks together, grab coffee from the cafe on the first floor, talk about everything and nothing. I learned that Lucas was an insomniac who survived on 4 hours of sleep and an alarming amount of caffeine. That he wanted to be a civil rights attorney, not because his father wanted him to go into law, but because he'd watched his best friend in high school get harassed by police for no reason other than the color of his skin. That he loved old movies, the kind from the 40s and 50s that nobody our age, which any Morand could quote entire scenes from Casablanca. I told him things too, about growing up with a single mom who worked 3 jobs, about being the first person in my family to go to college, about feeling like an imposter every single day I walked across this campus. You're not an imposter? Lucas said one evening. Both of us slouched in library chairs after hours. The building technically closed, but me having access because of my job. You're here because you earned it. Same as me. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way. I know. His voice was soft, understanding. But it's true anyway. I looked at him in the dim lighting the tired circles under his eyes, the way his shoulders carried tension even when he was sitting still. The vulnerability he showed me, but hid from everyone else. And I felt something dangerous bloom in my chest. Something I absolutely could not feel for Lucas Brennan. Because Lucas was straight. He had to be. I'd seen him with girls at parties, heard his teammates talk about his conquests, watched him play the role of the all-American football hero. There was no room in that image for someone like me, and even if there were, I knew better than to hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope got you hurt, so I pushed the feeling down, buried it deep, and told myself we were just friends. Nothing more? October arrived with cooler weather and increased stress. Midterms loomed, and Lucas's football schedule became brutal. I saw less of him at the library, but he started texting me instead. Random thoughts at 2 in the morning, complaints about his sports medicine class, photos of his terrible cafeteria food with captions like, "This is what peak athletic nutrition looks like." I found myself waiting for those texts, smiling at my phone like an idiot when they came through. My roommate Jamie noticed. "You've been glued to your phone lately," he commented one night, looking up from his laptop. "New girlfriend?" "Just a friend," I said quickly. "Too quickly?" Jamie raised an eyebrow. He was one of the few people who knew I was Guide, told him freshman year, and he'd been cool about it. "On hung? A friend who makes you smile like that?" "Drop it, Jamie." He held up his hands in surrender. "Your business. But for what it's worth, whoever they are, they seem to make you happy." Happy? Was that what this was? This constant awareness of Lucas's existence, this hypervigilance to every text, every interaction, every accidental touch, when we reached for the same book or coffee cup. It felt more like torture than happiness, especially when I watched him with other people. With his teammates, where he was confident and commanding. With girls who flirted with him at parties where he was charming but somehow distant. With his father, who I met once when the senator came to campus for a donor event. Where Lucas became someone I barely recognized, stiff, formal. Trying so hard to be perfect that he seemed to forget how to be human. The only place Lucas seemed truly himself was with me. In our quiet corners of the library, our late-night text conversations. The rare moments when we managed to grab lunch between his practices and my classes. Those moments felt sacred, private, like a secret we were keeping from the rest of the world. But they also felt temporary, like something that couldn't possibly last. The shift came in early November, during the week of the biggest game of the season. Westridge was playing against our rival school, Callahan State, and the entire campus was electric with anticipation. Lucas had been stressed for weeks. The pressure from his coaches, his teammates, his father all bearing down on him like a physical weight. I found him in the library late one night. Hunched over a table in the back corner, his sports psychology textbook open but clearly unread. He looked exhausted, defeated. I said softly, sliding into the chair across from him. "You okay?" He looked up, and I saw something raw in his expression. Something desperate. "I don't know if I can do this, Adrian." "Do what?" "Any of it. The game school. Living up to everyone's expectations." He ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up in ways that should have looked messy, but instead made him look heartbreakingly vulnerable. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating under the weight of who everyone needs me to be. I reached across the table without thinking, my hand covering his. "Then stop being who they need you to be. Be who you are. And if I don't know who that is, then figure it out. You have time, Lucas. You don't have to have everything solved right now." He stared at our hands, his large and calloused from years of football. Mine smaller and marked with paper cuts from library work. I realized I should pull away, that I was crossing some invisible line, but I couldn't make myself move. "What if who I am isn't who I'm supposed to be?" Lucas asked quietly. "What if I've been pretending for so long that I've forgotten what's real?" There was something in his voice, in the way he looked at me, that made my heart pound. But I couldn't let myself interpret it the way I wanted to. That way led to pain. "Then you start being real now," I said. "With people who matter? People who won't judge you like you." "Yeah, like me." Lucas's fingers shifted beneath mine, interlacing with my own. It was such a small gesture, barely noticeable to anyone passing by, but it felt monumental, earth-shattering. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he said. "You're the only person who sees me. The real me." I wanted to say something profound, something that would capture the enormity of what I felt in that moment. But all I could manage was, "I'm glad I see you." We sat like that for a long time, hands joined across a library table, the rest of the world distant and unimportant. And for those few minutes, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, what I felt wasn't completely one-sided the night of the Callahan game. The stadium was packed. I'd never been to a football game before. It wasn't really my shine, but Lucas had left me a ticket with a note. "Come if you can. I'd like to know you're there." So I went. I sat in the students section, surrounded by screaming fans painted in school colors, and watched Lucas command the field like he'd been born to do it. He was magnificent, powerful, focused, completely in his element. This was the Lucas the rest of the world saw. The hero. The star. But between plays, sometimes I'd catch him glancing up at the stands, searching for something. And once, when his eyes found mine in the crowd, he smiled. Just for a second. Just for me. Westridge won in the final seconds, Lucas throwing a perfect pass that secured the victory. The stadium erupted. His teammates mobbed him. Fans rushed the field. And I stood there, watching him disappear into a sea of celebration. Feeling both incredibly proud and utterly separate from his world, I left before the crowds got too bad. Walking back to my dorm in the cool November air, I didn't expect to hear from Lucas that night. He'd be busy with his team, with parties, with all the people who wanted to celebrate with the hero of the game. But my phone buzzed around 1 in the morning. Lucas, you left me? Didn't want to get crushed in the crowd. Congrats on the win. You were amazing, Lucas. Can I see you? I stared at the text, my heart racing. This was a bad idea. He'd been drinking, celebrating, running on adrenaline. Whatever he was feeling now would be gone by morning. Me, it's late, and you should be celebrating. Lucas, I am celebrating, but not with them. With you, please. I should have said no. Should have protected myself from whatever this was, but I'd never been good at denying Lucas anything. Me library. I can let us in. Lucas. Perfect. 10 minutes. I got dressed and walked back across campus, my mind racing with possibilities and fears. When I got to the library, Lucas was already waiting outside, still in his game day clothes, his hair damp from a quick shower. He smiled when he saw me, and it was softer than any smile he'd given the cheering crowds. I unlocked the door, and we slipped inside. The building dark and silent around us. We went to our usual spot, but neither of us sat down. The energy was different tonight. Charged. Dangerous. I kept looking for you during the game, Lucas said. Knowing you were there, it helped. I'm glad I came. You really were incredible out there. He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne mixed with sweat and grass and victory. Adrian, I need to tell you something. I've been trying to figure out how to say it for weeks, but I don't think there's a perfect way, so I'm just going to say it. My mouth went dry. Okay, you make me feel more myself than anyone else in my life. When I'm with you, I don't have to pretend or perform or be anyone other than who I am. And he paused, his jaw working like he was physically forcing the words out. I think about you constantly. I look for you in crowds. I make excuses to come to the library even when I don't need anything. And tonight, when we won, the only person I wanted to celebrate with was you. The words hung between us, heavy with implications. I was terrified to examine too closely. Lucas, I know this is complicated, he continued, his voice rough. I know I'm supposed to be a certain way, date certain people, fit a certain image. My father made it very clear what's expected of me. But when I'm with you, I don't care about any of that. I just want, he broke off, stepping even closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his body. My back hit the bookshelf behind me. I had nowhere to go. Nowhere to hide from whatever was happening. What do you want? I whispered. Lucas's hand came up, his fingers barely brushing my jaw. Tell me you feel this too. Tell me I'm not imagining it. Should have lied. Should have protected us both from the inevitable fallout of the truth. But I'd never been good at lying to Lucas. You're not imagining it, I breathed. The kiss happened so fast I barely processed it. 1 second, Lucas was looking at me with desperate hope in his eyes. The next, his lips were on mine, his body pressing me back against the shelves, his hands framing my face like I was something precious and breakable. The kiss was everything I'd imagined, and nothing like a truffer, more urgent. Tasting like desperation and relief and everything we'd been holding back for months. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucas rested his forehead against mine. I've wanted to do that for so long, he murmured. Lucas. His name came out shaky, uncertain. What are we doing? I don't know, but I don't want to stop. He kissed me again, slower this time, and I let myself fall into it. Let myself have this moment, even though I knew it was borrowed time. Even though I knew that come morning, reality would crash back in, and we'd have to deal with the impossible situation we'd created. But for now, in the darkness of the library, with Lucas's arms around me and his heart pounding against mine, I let myself believe that maybe this could be real. We didn't talk about what it meant. Not that night. Lucas walked me back to my dorm as dawn was breaking, both of us exhausted but wired. Unable to stop touching his hand on my lower back, my fingers catching his sleeve. Small points of contact that felt electric in their simplicity. I'll text you later, he said when we reached my building. He hesitated. Like he wanted to kiss me again, but we were too exposed here. Too visible. So he just smiled, that soft, private smile that was only for me, and walked away. I went upstairs in a daze. Jamie was still asleep, his snores filling our small room. I collapsed onto my bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to process what had just happened. Lucas Brennan had kissed me. More than once. Had told me he thought about me constantly, that I made him feel like himself. It felt like a dream. Too good to be real, and maybe it was. The next few weeks were the strangest of my life. Lucas and I existed in this weird liminal space, more than friends, but not exactly together. We couldn't be, not publicly. Lucas had too much at stake. His football scholarship, his father's political career, his carefully constructed image. If anyone found out he was involved with another guy, it could destroy everything he'd worked for. I understood that. I did, but it didn't make it easier. We stole moments when we could. Late nights in the library after everyone else had gone home. Early mornings before his practice, meeting at a coffee shop off campus where no one from Westridge went. His car parked in dark corners of empty lots. Stolen kisses in the shadows where no one could see. It was exhilarating and exhausting in equal measure. Every touch felt forbidden. Every kiss like we were getting away with something dangerous. And maybe we were. But there were moments, quiet, perfect moments where it felt worth the risk. Like when Lucas fell asleep on my shoulder during a movie in my dorm room, Jamie having gone home for the weekend. Or when he brought me coffee during my library shift with my order memorized perfectly. Or when he looked at me with such naked affection that I couldn't breathe. "I wish it could be different," he said one night. Both of us lying on the floor of the empty library, the building closed around us. "I wish I could just be with you, publicly, like a normal couple." "We're not normal," I said, trying to keep my tone light, even though his words hurt. "You're a football star, and I'm a library nerd. We were never going to be normal, you know what I mean?" But I also knew wishing didn't change reality. "Your father would disown you," I said quietly. "Your team would turn on you. You'd lose your scholarship, your future, everything. Maybe it would be worth it." "Don't say that. Don't say things you don't mean." Lucas rolled onto his side, facing me, his hand finding mine in the darkness. "What makes you think I don't mean it?" "Because I know you. You've worked too hard to throw it all away for." I couldn't finish the sentence. "For me, for someone like me. For what?" "For the first real thing I've ever felt." His voice was fierce, almost angry. "Adrian, this isn't just some fling for me. You're the best part of my day. The only thing that makes sense in my completely fucked up life." Wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly it physically hurt. But I'd lived my whole life knowing that people like Lucas didn't end up with people like me. Not in reality. Not when it mattered. "I love you, Lucas," said suddenly. "I know I shouldn't say it. I know it makes this more complicated, but I do. I love you." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd imagined hearing them 1,000 times. But actually hearing them, seeing the vulnerability in Lucas's eyes as he said them, was something else entirely. "Lucas, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know." But I did say it back, because it was true. Because I'd been in love with him since that first day in the library when he'd smiled at me like I mattered. Because even though I knew this would probably destroy me, I couldn't not say it. "I love you too." Lucas kissed me then, soft and sweet and desperate all at once. And for a little while, in our borrowed sanctuary, we let ourselves pretend that love was enough. December brought winter and complications. Lucas's father was campaigning for re-election, which meant increased scrutiny on his family. Lucas became more careful, more paranoid about being seen with me. Our meetings became less frequent, more rushed. He was stressed constantly, snapping at his teammates, struggling in classes, barely sleeping. I tried to be understanding. Tried to give him space when he needed it. But it hurt. Watching him pull away, feeling like a secret shame rather than someone he loved. "I'm doing this to protect you," he said, when I finally confronted him about it. We were in his car, parked behind an abandoned building near campus, the heater running to fight off the December cold. "If my father finds out about you, he won't just come after me. He'll come after you too. He'll make your life hell, Adrian. He'll find a way to get your scholarship revoked, to make it impossible for you to stay here. I can't let that happen. So what? We just pretend we don't exist, that what we have doesn't matter? That's not what I'm saying then. What are you saying, Lucas? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like you're ashamed of me. How can you even think that? His voice was pained, desperate. Adrian, you're the only good thing in my life. The only real thing. But I'm terrified of losing you, and if my father, your father, doesn't control everything. In my world, he does. We sat in silence, the weight of his words settling between us like a physical barrier. I understood his fear. I did. But understanding didn't make it hurt less. Maybe we should take a break, I said finally. Just until after the holidays, until things calm down. No. Lucas's hand shot out, grabbing mine. No, Adrian, please. I know I'm handling this badly, but don't give up on us. Please. I looked at him, the dark circles under his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the fear and love warring in his expression. And I didn't have the strength to walk away. Okay, I whispered. Okay, but something had shifted between us. Something fragile had cracked, and I didn't know if we could repair it. The breaking point came right before winter break. Lucas's team was invited to a bowl game, a huge honor, especially for a junior. His father flew in for the announcement, bringing photographers and reporters with him. I watched from a distance as Senator Brennan stood with his arm around Lucas's shoulders, both of them smiling for cameras, the perfect picture of American success. That night, Lucas texted me, "Can't meet tonight. Family dinner with my father and his campaign people." I'm sorry. I told him it was fine, that I understood. But I was lying. I was angry. Not at Lucas exactly, but at the situation. At the unfairness of having to hide, of being someone's secret, of loving someone who couldn't love me back in the light of day. Jamie found me in our dorm room, staring at my phone like it held answers to questions I couldn't articulate. "You okay?" he asked. "No." Sat down on his bed facing me. "You want to talk about it?" I'd kept Lucas a secret for so long, partly to protect him, partly because saying it out loud made it real in ways that terrified me. But I was tired of carrying this alone. "I'm in love with someone I can't have," I said finally. "The guy you've been texting?" I nodded. "Is he straight?" "No, but he's closeted. And he has reasons, good reasons, for staying that way. But it's killing me, Jamie, being his secret. Never being enough." "You are enough," Jamie said firmly. "If he can't see that, that's his loss. It's not that simple. It never is. But Adrian, you deserve someone who's proud to be with you, who doesn't hide you away like you're something to be ashamed of. He's not ashamed, then why are you sitting here alone while he's off living his public life?" The question hit harder than Jamie probably intended, because he was right. For all of Lucas's words about love and fear and protection, the reality was that I was alone. That I'd been alone this entire time, just in different ways. My phone buzzed with another text from Lucas. "Miss you. Can I see you tomorrow?" I stared at it for a long time before responding, "I don't know if this is working." The phone rang immediately. I stepped out into the hallway to answer it. "What do you mean it's not working?" Lucas's voice was panicked. "Adrian, what's going on?" "I can't do this anymore, Lucas. I can't be your secret. I can't keep pretending I'm okay with meeting in dark corners and empty buildings. I love you, but I'm not enough for you to risk anything for, and that's my voice broke. That's killing me. You are enough. You're everything. Adrian, please don't do this." "No." "Then tell someone. Tell your teammates. Tell your father. Tell anyone that I exist, that I matter to you." Silence. "That's what I thought," I said, my heart shattering. "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry." I hung up before he could respond, before I could take it back, before I could let him talk me into staying in a situation that was destroying me piece by piece. Lucas called back immediately. Then again. Then sent a flurry of texts, each more desperate than the last. I turned my phone off and went back inside, where Jamie pulled me into a hug and let me fall apart. Winter break was torture. I went home to my mom's small apartment, picked up extra shifts at the grocery store where I'd worked in high school, and tried to pretend everything was fine. But my mom knew me too well. "You're heartbroken," she said one night over dinner. "Cheap pasta and jarred sauce, the meal of my entire childhood. How can you tell? You're my son." I can always tell. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Want to talk about it? I told her everything. About Lucas, about the secrecy, about falling in love with someone who couldn't love me back the way I needed. She listened without judgment, her expression soft with understanding. Baby, she said when I finished, I can't tell you what to do. But I can tell you this. You deserve to be loved openly and proudly, not hidden away like something shameful. And if this boy can't give you that, then he doesn't deserve you, no matter how much you love him. But I understand why he can't. I know you do. And that's one of the things I love most about you, your capacity for empathy, for understanding other people's struggles. But understanding doesn't mean you have to accept less than you deserve. Her words stayed with me through the rest of break. I kept my phone off, avoided social media, tried to create space between Lucas and myself. It didn't stop me from thinking about him constantly, from wondering if he was okay, from missing him so intensely it felt like a physical wound. But I also felt something else. Something that might have been the beginning of healing. Or at least the recognition that I couldn't keep living in limbo, waiting for Lucas to be ready for something he might never be ready for. I came back to campus in January with a resolve that felt fragile but real. I would focus on school, on work, on building a life that didn't revolve around Lucas Brennan. I would move on. That lasted exactly 2 days. I was shelving books in the library when I felt someone watching me. I turned to find Lucas standing at the end of the aisle, looking like he hadn't slept in weeks. He was thinner than I remembered, his face drawn, shadows under his eyes so dark they looked like bruises. Adrian, he said, my name sounding like a prayer. What are you doing here? I needed to see you. You wouldn't answer my calls. I told you I couldn't do this anymore. I know, and I'm not here to change your mind or ask you to come back. He stepped closer, his hands shoved in his jacket pockets like he didn't trust himself not to reach for me. I'm here to tell you that you were right. About all of it. I didn't say anything, afraid of what would come next. I spent the entire break thinking about what you said, Lucas continued. About being proud of you, about not hiding. And you were right, I was hiding. Not because I was ashamed of you, but because I was terrified. Terrified of losing everything I'd worked for, of disappointing my father, of not being the person everyone expected me to be. Lucas, let me finish, please. He took a shaky breath. I went home for Christmas, had dinner with my father and his campaign staff, and the whole time, all I could think about was you. About how much I wished you were there. About how wrong it felt to be pretending to be someone I'm not. What are you saying? I'm saying I told my father. About us. About me. The words hit me like a shockwave. You what? On New Year's Eve, he was going on about my future, about the kind of wife I should marry, the image I needed to project. And I couldn't anymore. I told him I was gay. I told him about you. Couldn't breathe. What did he say? Lucas's laugh was bitter. Pretty much what you'd expect. Told me I was destroying my future, that I was being selfish and foolish, that I needed to get my head straight before I ruined his career along with mine. Then he cut off my trust fund and told me not to come home until I'd gotten over this phase. Oh my God, Lucas, it's okay. I mean, it's not, but it will be. I talked to my coach, explained the situation. He's keeping my scholarship active, said. As long as I perform on the field and in classes, my personal life is my business. I moved out of the athletic dorm and into an apartment off campus. It's small and kind of shitty, but it's mine. I was reeling, trying to process everything he was saying. Lucas had come out, had lost his father's support, had potentially torpedoed his entire future. And for what? Why? I whispered. Why would you risk all of that? Because you were right. Because I can't keep pretending to be someone I'm not. And because his voice broke slightly. Because I love you, Adrian. I love you more than I'm afraid. And I know I hurt you. I know I might be too late. But I had to tell you. I had to show you that you're not a secret anymore. That you never should have been. Tears were streaming down my face before I realized I was crying. Lucas stepped closer, his hands coming up to cup my face, his thumbs brushing away the tears. "I'm so sorry," he said, "for making you feel like you weren't enough, like you weren't worth the risk. You're worth everything, Adrian. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." "You stupid, brave, impossible man," I choked out. "You shouldn't have your father. Your future will figure themselves out, or they won't." But I couldn't keep living a lie. Not anymore. Not when the truth is standing right in front of me. I kissed him. Right there in the library, in the middle of the day, where anyone could walk by and see. I kissed him like he was air and I'd been drowning, like he was home and I'd been lost, like he was everything I'd ever wanted and never thought I could have. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathing hard, Lucas rested his forehead against mine. "Does this mean you'll give me another chance?" he asked. "You're an idiot," I said, but I was smiling through my tears. "A brave, selfless idiot. Is that a yes?" "Yes, yes, you absolute disaster of a human. Yes." Out. It wasn't easy after that. Coming out, especially for someone as high profile as Lucas, never is. The campus talked. His teammates were split, some supportive, some decidedly not. There were ugly comments, slurs spray-painted on his apartment door. Hostile glares from people who'd once cheered for him. But there were also people who stood by him. His coach, who made it clear that bigotry wouldn't be tolerated on his team. Several teammates who became fierce allies. Jamie, who became one of Lucas's closest friends and our most aggressive defender. When people made comments, and there was me. Through all of it, there was me. Lucas and I moved in together that spring, to a slightly less shitty apartment than his first one. We studied together, cooked terrible meals together, fell asleep on the couch during movie nights together. We held hands walking across campus, kissed goodbye before classes, existed openly and unapologetically as a couple. It wasn't always perfect. Lucas's relationship with his father remained strained. The senator still called occasionally, still tried to convince Lucas to reconsider his choices, still held out hope that this was a phase. Lucas was learning to live with the grief of that. The loss of the father he'd wanted but never quite had. But he was also learning to live authentically, to be himself without apology. And watching him become more comfortable in his own skin, more confident in who he was the most beautiful thing I'd ever witnessed. "I never thought I could have this," Lucas said one night. Both of us lying in bed, my head on his chest, his fingers running through my hair. A real relationship. Someone who knows all of me and loves me anyway. "I do love you," I said. "All of you. Even the parts that snore and steal the covers." Laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. "I love you too. More than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. Even though it cost you everything." It didn't cost me everything. It cost me things that were never really mine to begin with: my father's approval, a future I never wanted, a version of myself that was slowly killing me. He tilted my face up to kiss me softly. "But it gave me you. It gave me the freedom to be who I actually am. That's not a cost. That's a gift." Senior year, Lucas led his team to the championship game. I sat in the stands wearing his jersey, number 7. His name across my back, surrounded by Jamie and our friends, and watched him play like he had nothing left to prove. Because he didn't. Not to his father, not to the people who doubted him, not to anyone but himself. They won. And this time, when Lucas looked up into the stands after the final whistle, he didn't just smile. He pointed. Right at me. In front of everyone. Then he jogged over to the fence separating the field from the stands, gestured for me to come down. I did, my heart pounding, cameras flashing all around us. When I reached him, he pulled me close and kissed me. Right there, in front of the whole stadium, the crowd went wild, some cheering, some booing, everyone reacting. But I didn't care about them. All I cared about was Lucas, his arms around me, his smile bright and genuine and free. "Love you," he said against my lips. "Love you too, Captain." We graduated that spring. Lucas got into law school, not his first choice. Since some schools seemed uncomfortable with his controversy, but a good program that wanted him for who he was. I got a job at a university library in the same city, finally able to put my degree to use. We moved into a tiny apartment together, adopted a cat we named Hemingway, built a life that was small and ordinary and absolutely perfect. Lucas's father eventually came around. Sort of. He showed up at Lucas's law school graduation, stiff and formal, but there. He shook my hand, called me Adrian instead of pretending I didn't exist. It wasn't acceptance. Not really. But it was something. He'll get there, Lucas said later that night. Both of us sitting on our apartment balcony, the city lights spread out below us. Or he won't. Either way, I have you. That's what matters. When did you get so wise? The day I met a library worker who made me feel like maybe I could be myself. He pulled me closer, kissed my temple. Best decision I ever made, letting you into my life. Pretty sure I let you into mine. Semantics. Settling against his chest, listening to his heartbeat steady and sure and mine. We'd been through hell to get here. Had lost things and people along the way. Had fought for every inch of happiness we'd managed to build. But sitting there wrapped in each other, I wouldn't have changed a single moment of it, because Lucas was right. This what we had was worth everything years later. I stood at the back of a courtroom watching Lucas deliver his closing argument in his first major civil rights case. He was defending a teenager who'd been expelled from school for being transgender, and he was magnificent. Passionate, articulate, fierce in his defense of someone who couldn't defend themselves. The judge ruled in their favor. Lucas's client cried in relief. And when Lucas turned back to the gallery, his eyes found mine immediately. He smiled that same soft, private smile he'd given me that first day in the library. The one that said, "I see you, and you matter, and I love you." After court, we walked to the parking lot hand in hand, Lucas still in his suit. Me, in my librarian, casual cardigan and khakis. We probably looked like the oddest couple, the high-powered attorney, and the quiet bookworm, but we worked. We'd always worked. "I'm proud of you," I said. "Couldn't have done it without you. You know that, right?" "I do." "Good." He stopped walking, turned to face me. His expression, suddenly nervous in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Because there's something I need to ask you." My heart started pounding. "Okay." Lucas reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Right there in the courthouse parking lot, he dropped to one knee. "Adrian Cole," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "You've been my anchor, my safe place, my home for 8 years. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You loved me at my worst and made me want to be my best. I can't imagine my life without you in it, and I don't want to try. Will you marry me?" I was crying before he finished the question, nodding frantically, because I couldn't get words past the lump in my throat. "Yes, yes, of course, yes, you ridiculous man." He surged up and kissed me. Both of us laughing and crying, the ring box still clutched in his hand. When we finally broke apart, he slid the ring onto my finger. Simple, elegant, perfect. "I love you," he said. "Have I mentioned that lately?" "Once or twice, but I don't mind hearing it again." "I love you, Adrian." "Today, tomorrow, forever." "Forever," I echoed. I liked the sound of that. We got married the following spring in a small ceremony at the library where we'd first met, now renovated and beautiful, but still the same in all the ways that mattered. Jamie was my best man. Lucas's former coach officiated. Even Lucas's father showed up. And while he didn't smile much, he stayed for the entire reception and danced one awkward dance with Lucas. That made both of them tear up. Our first dance was to an old song from the 40s. One of Lucas's favorites from the movies he loved. As we swayed together, surrounded by everyone we loved, Lucas leaned down and whispered in my ear, "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me, for loving me, for making me brave enough to be myself." "Thank you for the same things." He kissed me softly, and I thought about that first day in the library. About the scared, closeted football captain who'd walked into my life and changed everything. About how far we'd both come, how much we'd overcome, how impossible this had once seemed, and I realized that maybe the impossible things were the ones most worth fighting for. The love that shouldn't work, but somehow does. The person who makes you braver and better and more yourself than you ever thought you could be. Lucas had been that person for me. And if the journey to get here had been hardened, it had been God. Had also been worth every single moment of pain and fear and uncertainty, because here in his arms, I was home, and that was all I'd ever needed. Years after that, I was organizing the LGBTQ section of our university library, now expanded. Prominent, celebrated rather than hidden, when I felt someone watching me. I turned to find a young man, maybe 19, looking nervous and hopeful. "Can I help you?" I asked. "Are you Adrian Brennan?" he asked. "The one who wrote that article about coming out in college?" I smiled. I'd written that piece years ago about my experience with Lucas, about the fear and hope and ultimate triumph of living authentically. It had been published in a queer magazine and apparently still got passed around. That's me. I wanted to thank you. I read your story last year when I was trying to figure out if I should come out. It helped a lot. My chest felt warm. I'm glad. How are you doing now? Better. My family's still adjusting, but I'm out. I'm me. He smiled, genuine and bright. It's scary, but also really, really good. Gets easier, I promised. Not all at once, and not without challenges. But it does get easier. And being yourself is always worth it. Your husband, the attorney? Is he still working on LGBTQ plus rights cases? He is. Actually, he's speaking at the law school next week if you want to hear him. The young man's eyes lit up. Really? I'd love that. After he left with the information about Lucas's lecture, I stood there for a moment thinking about the journey we'd been on. The scared college kids we'd been, the obstacles we'd overcome, the life we'd built together. My phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. Done with court. Dinner tonight. I have something to celebrate. Me. Another win? Lucas, the best kind. Tell you all about it over Thai food? Love you. Me. Love you too. See you soon. I finished my work and headed out into the afternoon sunshine. Thinking about that young man who'd come seeking hope in our story, thinking about all the young people out there who needed to know that it was possible, that they could be themselves and be loved and build beautiful lives. Lucas and I had been lucky. We'd had each other, had found each other at exactly the right moment, even when it seemed like the wrong one. We'd been brave when it mattered most. And we'd built something real and lasting from what could have been just a secret, just a moment, just a missed connection. But it hadn't been luck. Not really. It had been choice. Lucas choosing to be honest. Me choosing to demand what I deserved. Both of us choosing each other again and again, even when it was hard. That night, over pad thai and spring rolls, Lucas told me about his latest case, another victory for a queer youth denied housing. His eyes were bright with passion, with purpose, with the certainty that what he was doing mattered. "You're incredible. You know that?" I said. Says the man who inspires queer college students by just existing. We're a pretty great team. The best. He reached across the table, his hand finding mine, the same gesture we'd shared that first night in the library all those years ago. I'd choose you again, you know? If I had to do it all over, I'd choose you every single time, even knowing what it would cost. Especially knowing what it would cost. Because Adrian, you weren't the cost. You were the prize. You've always been the prize. I squeezed his hand, my heart full of more love than I'd known was possible. Lucky me then. Getting to be chosen by Lucas Brennan. Lucky us, he corrected. Getting to choose each other, he was right. Lucky didn't begin to cover it, but it was a start. The ND, thank you so much for reading this story. If you felt the emotion, the hope, and the journey of Lucas and Adrian, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on this video. Your support means everything and helps me create more stories like this. I want to hear from you in the comments which moment touched you the most. Have you ever had to choose between love and expectation? Should I create a part 2 showing their married life and the challenges they face as a same-sex couple in the legal and political world? This story is for everyone who's ever had to be brave enough to love openly. You deserve that courage. You deserve that happiness. And you are worthy of being chosen. See you in the next story. The football captain who wasn't allowed to love me, but he did anyway. Part 2, When Love Isn't Enough. Until it is, the courtroom was silent, except for the sound of my pen tapping against the legal pad. I sat in the gallery watching Lucas pace in front of the jury, his voice steady and commanding as he delivered his closing argument. 3 years of marriage, and he still took my breath away when he was in his element like this. Members of the jury, Lucas said, his tone both gentle and firm. Tyler Matthews is 16 years old. He likes comic books, plays video games with his friends, and dreams of becoming a graphic designer. He's also transgender, and his school decided that made him less deserving of dignity, safety, and education than every other student. I watched the jurors' faces as Lucas spoke. Some were moved, nodding along. Others remained skeptical, their arms crossed defensively. This case had been difficult from the start. A conservative district, a school board backed by powerful religious organizations, and a client who'd already attempted suicide once because of the relentless bullying. Lucas had taken the case pro bono, despite his firm's concerns. "This is why I became a lawyer," he'd told me when the case first came across his desk. "To fight for kids who can't fight for themselves?" Now, watching him fight, I felt that familiar surge of pride mixed with worry. Lucas pushed himself too hard, took on too many difficult cases, carried the weight of every injustice he couldn't fix. Some nights I'd find him awake at 3 in the morning, reviewing case files, his face drawn with exhaustion and determination. "Your husband's going to win this one," a voice whispered beside me. I turned to see Marcus Chen, another attorney from Lucas's firm, sliding into the seat next to mine. "He's got them." "I hope so," I whispered back. "For Tyler's sake?" Marcus smiled. "You know, Lucas, he doesn't lose when it matters." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they finally returned with a verdict in Tyler's favor, the courtroom erupted. Tyler's parents sobbed with relief. Lucas's co-counsel pumped their fists, and Lucas just closed his eyes for a moment, letting out a breath he'd been holding for weeks. When court was dismissed, I met him in the hallway. He pulled me into a tight hug, and I felt the tension finally leaving his body. "You were incredible," I said against his shoulder. "We did it," he murmured. "That kid gets to go back to school. He gets to just be himself, because of you." He pulled back, cupping my face with both hands. "Because of us. You think I could do any of this without you keeping me sane?" I smiled, leaning into his touch. "You give me too much credit? Not possible." He kissed me softly, not caring that we were standing in a public courthouse hallway. 3 years ago, this would have terrified him. Now it was as natural as breathing. That evening, we had dinner with Tyler and his parents at a quiet restaurant downtown. Tyler was shy at first, barely making eye contact, but as the meal progressed, he started to open up. He showed us his sketchbook, filled with intricate comic book characters and fantastical landscape sand. Talked about his plans for the future now that he could return to school safely. "I want to be like you when I grow up," Tyler said to Lucas, his voice barely above a whisper. "Someone who helps people." Lucas's eyes went suspiciously bright. "You're already helping people, Tyler, by being brave enough to stand up for yourself. You're making it easier for every kid who comes after you. Mr. Brennan is right," Tyler's mother said, reaching across the table to squeeze Lucas's hand. "What you did for our son, for our family, we can never repay you." "Don't need to repay me," Lucas said firmly. "Just help Tyler be the amazing person he already is. That's all the payment I need." As we drove home later that night, Lucas was quiet. I knew that Lucky was processing, working through emotions he didn't quite know how to express. "Talk to me," I said, my hand finding his on the gear shift. "I keep thinking about us at that age," he said finally. "How scared we were. How much we had to hide. And I'm grateful Tyler won't have to hide as much as we did, but I'm also angry that he had to fight this hard just to exist. You're making it better. One case at a time. Is it enough, though?" He glanced at me, his expression troubled. "Sometimes I feel like I'm barely making a dent. For every Tyler we help, there are hundreds more suffering in silence." I squeezed his hand. "Lucas, you can't save everyone. You'll burn yourself out trying. Maybe that's the point. Maybe burning out while fighting for something that matters is better than playing it safe." This was the conversation we'd been having more frequently lately. Lucas was driven to the point of self-destruction, taking on more cases than he could reasonably handle, working 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and determination. I understood the why he was trying to make up for lost time, for the years he'd spent hiding and pretending. But I was terrified of watching him destroy himself in the process. "I need you to take care of yourself," I said quietly, "because I need you. Not just the version of you that wins cases and saves people. All of you, including the parts that need rest and care." Lucas was silent for a long moment. Then he lifted my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles gently. "I'll try. I promise." 2 weeks later, Lucas came home at midnight to find me still awake, curled up on the couch with a book. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. "You should be asleep," he said, dropping his briefcase by the door. "So should you. But here we are." He collapsed onto the couch beside me, his head falling back against the cushions. "New case came in today. Transgender woman facing housing discrimination. Her landlord found out and is trying to evict her using some bullshit morality clause. Are you taking it?" "Of course I'm taking it." He rolled his head to look at me. "I have to, Adrian. She has nowhere else to turn." "Lucas, you're already handling 5 active cases. Your paralegal told me you've been sleeping at the office. For an hour or two here and there, that's not sustainable and you know it." His jaw tightened. "What am I supposed to do? Turn her away? Tell her I'm too busy to help?" "I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to set boundaries before you collapse." "Fine. You're not fine. You're running yourself into the ground, and I'm watching you disappear under the weight of trying to fix everything." Lucas sat up, frustration flickering across his face. "I thought you understood. I thought you of all people would get why this matters so much to me. I do understand. But understanding doesn't mean I'm going to sit back and watch you self-destruct." We stared at each other, the tension thick between us. This wasn't our first fight about his workload, and I had a sinking feeling it wouldn't be our last. "I'm going to bed," Lucas said finally, standing up. "We can talk about this when we're both less tired." "Lucas, not now, Adrian. Please." He disappeared into our bedroom, and I sat there on the couch, my heart heavy with worry and frustration. I loved Lucas's passion, his dedication, his fierce desire to make the world better. But I was terrified it was going to break him and break us in the process. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. I got a call from Marcus at 2 in the morning. "Adrian, you need to get to St. Catherine's Hospital." Lucas collapsed at the office. "They're running tests now, but the doctor thinks it's exhaustion and dehydration." I was out the door in minutes, still in my pajamas, my heart pounding with fear. When I got to the hospital, I found Lucas in a bed in the emergency room, an IV in his arm, looking pale and small in a way that made my chest ache. "Hey," he said weakly when he saw me. "Before you say it, no. You were right." I pulled a chair up to his bedside, taking his free hand in both of mine. "What happened?" I was working late, reviewing case files for tomorrow's hearing. Got up to get more coffee, and just the room started spinning. Next thing I knew, Marcus was calling an ambulance. "Lucas, I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry, Adrian. I didn't mean to scare you. I just thought I could handle it all." "You don't have to handle it all. That's what I've been trying to tell you." Tears welled in his eyes. "I know, but every time someone comes to me with a case, I see us. I see the scared kids we were, the people who needed help and didn't get it. And I can't say no, because what if we'd needed someone and they'd said no?" I climbed carefully onto the hospital bed beside him, wrapping my arms around him as he cried. We stayed like that for a long time, Lucas finally letting himself break down, me holding him together as best I could. "I can't lose you," I whispered against his hair. "Not to burnout, not to exhaustion, not to your need to save everyone. I need you here with me, alive and whole." "I don't know how to do less," he admitted. "I don't know how to look at people who need help and not give everything I have." Then we figure it out together. We set boundaries. We hire more people at the firm. We say no sometimes, even when it hurts, because you can't help anyone if you're dead. Lucas nodded against my shoulder. Okay, I'll try. The doctor kept Lucas overnight for observation. The diagnosis was severe exhaustion, dehydration, and the early stages of an ulcer from stress. They prescribed rest, better nutrition, and most importantly, a significant reduction in his workload. Lucas's firm was surprisingly supportive. His senior partner, a woman named Patricia Rodriguez, who'd been an ally from day one, sat down with us in her office the next week.
"Oh, Lucas.
"You're one of our most talented attorneys," she said, her tone kind but firm. "But you're no good to us or to your clients if you work yourself to death. We're bringing in 2 more civil rights attorneys to share the caseload. You're going to cut back to 40-hour weeks. Non-negotiable." "Patricia, I can't just abandon these cases." "You're not abandoning them. You're allowing yourself to be human. There's a difference." She looked at me, then back at Lucas. "Your husband looks like he hasn't slept in weeks because he's been worried about you. Don't make him bury you before you're 30. The bluntness of her words hit Lucas hard. He nodded slowly. Okay, I'll cut back." The adjustment wasn't easy. Lucas struggled with letting go, with trusting other attorneys to handle cases he'd started. But slowly, gradually, he learned to step back, to delegate, to accept that he couldn't save everyone, but he could save some, and that had to be enough. Our evenings became ours again. We cooked dinner together, watched movies, took walks through our neighborhood. Lucas started sleeping through the night instead of waking up at 3 to work. The tension that had been building between us began to ease. One night, about 2 months after his hospital scare, we were lying in bed together. Lucas had his head on my chest, my fingers running through his hair. "I was so scared of losing myself," he said quietly, "of becoming comfortable and complacent, of forgetting what it felt like to need help and not get it. Could never forget that. It's part of who you are. But I was using it as an excuse to destroy myself, to prove something I don't even know what. That I was worthy of being saved? That I deserved to be here?" I kissed the top of his head. "You've always been worthy. You've always deserved to be here. You don't have to earn your existence through suffering. When did you get so wise? I learned from the best." I tilted his face up to kiss him softly. "I learned from you." Life settled into a new rhythm after that. Lucas still took on important cases, still fought fiercely for his clients, but he did it sustainably. He took weekends off. He went to therapy to work through his need to save everyone. He learned to say no without guilt consuming him. And our relationship deepened in ways I hadn't expected. The crisis had forced us to confront things we'd been avoiding: the fear, the pressure, the weight of trying to be perfect representations of what a queer couple could be. We learned to be messy together, to fight and make up, to support each other without losing ourselves. One Saturday afternoon, we were at the farmer's market, something that had become our weekly ritual. Lucas was examining tomatoes with the intensity usually reserved for legal briefs when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and I saw his expression shift. "It's my father." We'd been in limited contact with Senator Brennan since the wedding. He called occasionally, usually around holidays, conversations brief and awkward. But this was random. "Mid-October, no special occasion," Lucas answered. "Dad?" I couldn't hear the other end of the conversation, but I watched Lucas's face cycle through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been hope. "Yeah, I can do that," Lucas said finally. "Tomorrow works. See you then?" He hung up and stared at his phone for a moment. What did he want? I asked. "He's in town? Wants to have lunch?" "Both of us." Lucas looked at me. "He specifically asked if you'd come." My stomach dropped. In 3 years of marriage, Senator Brennan had never directly reached out to me. We'd been in the same room at the wedding, had exchanged awkward pleasantries. But that was it. "Do you want me there?" I asked. "Of course I do. But Adrian, I need you to know. If he says anything disrespectful, we're leaving. I won't subject you to that. I can handle your father. I know you can. But you shouldn't have to." The next day, we met Senator Brennan at an upscale restaurant downtown. He was already seated when we arrived, looking older than I remembered, more gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. "Lucas," he said, standing to shake his son's hand. Then he turned to me, and for a moment I saw him struggle with something. Finally, he extended his hand. "Thank you for coming." We sat down, and the first few minutes were excruciatingly awkward. Small talk about the weather, the restaurant, anything but what we were actually there to discuss. Finally, Senator Brennan set down his water glass and looked at Lucas, really looked at him, like he was seeing his son for the first time in years. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Both of you." Lucas went very still beside me. "Dad, let me finish, please." The senator took a breath. "When you came out, when you told me about Adrian, I reacted badly. I was thinking about my career, my image, what people would say. I was thinking about everything except what mattered most to you. My son." "What changed?" Lucas asked, his voice carefully neutral. "I've been watching you, following your cases. That Tyler Matthews case, I read every article, watched every news segment, and I realized something. You're doing more good in the world as exactly who you are than I've done in 20 years of politics playing it safe." Lucas's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. "I'm proud of you," Senator Brennan continued, and his voice broke slightly. "I should have said that 3 years ago. I should have said it every day since. But I was too stubborn, too afraid of what embracing you fully might cost me. And in the process, I lost something far more valuable, my relationship with my son." "I'm not asking you to agree with everything I do," Lucas said quietly. "But I need you to respect who I am, who we are. I understand that now." And Adrian, the senator, turned to me, and I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. "I'm sorry for making you feel unwelcome in this family. You make my son happy in ways I've never seen. That should have been enough for me from the beginning." I didn't know what to say. This wasn't the conversation I'd expected. "Thank you," I managed finally. "That means a lot." Lunch lasted 2 hours. We talked about Lucas's work, my job at the university library, even politics, though we carefully avoided the more controversial topics. It wasn't perfect. There were still awkward moments, still gaps that years of estrangement had created. But it was a start. When we left the restaurant, Senator Brennan hugged. Lucas actually hugged him. Hand shook my hand again with more warmth than before. "I'd like to do this again," he said. "If you're willing, maybe Thanksgiving?" "I know it's asking a lot, but we'll think about it," Lucas said. "But Dad?" "Thank you. For today." The car on the way home, Lucas was quiet. I could see him processing, working through emotions too complex for easy words. "You okay?" I asked. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "Part of me is happy. Part of me is angry that it took him this long. Part of me doesn't trust it, like he'll change his mind again when it becomes politically inconvenient. All of those feelings are valid, I know. I just didn't want to believe him, Adrian. I want to believe he actually means it. Then we take it slow. We let him prove it through actions, not just words. And if he disappoints us, we protect ourselves." Lucas nodded, bringing my hand to his lips. "Have I mentioned lately that you're the smartest person I know?" "Once or twice, but I don't mind hearing it again." Thanksgiving that year was surreal. We flew to Lucas's childhood home, a sprawling estate I'd only seen in photographs. Senator Brennan greeted us at the door, and for the first time I felt like he actually saw me, not as an obstacle or a political liability, but as a person. As someone his son loved, the holiday wasn't without its awkward moments. Some of the senator's political friends were there, and I caught more than a few disapproving glances. But Senator Brennan made a point of introducing us as a couple, of including me in conversations, of treating our marriage as legitimate and important. At one point, I found myself alone with him in his study. He was showing me his book collection when he paused, turning to face me. "I want you to know something," he said. "When Lucas first told me about you, I looked into your background. Your mother, your circumstances, everything. I was looking for reasons to disapprove, to convince Lucas he was making a mistake." My jaw tightened. "Did you find what you were looking for?" "No. I found a young man who'd overcome incredible obstacles to build a life for himself, who'd worked multiple jobs to put himself through school, who genuinely cared about my son in ways that had nothing to do with his money or status. paused. I found exactly the kind of person I'd want Lucas to be with. If I hadn't been so blinded by my own prejudices, Senator, call me Richard, please. And I'm telling you this because I want you to understand don't just accept this relationship now. I respect it. I respect you. And I'm sorry it took me so long to get here. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. My throat tight with emotion I didn't quite know how to process. When Lucas and I left a few days later, his father hugged us both. Come back soon, he said. And Lucas, I'm proud of you. Both of you. In the car to the airport, Lucas cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. From the weight of finally being seen and accepted by the father he'd always wanted to please. We're going to be okay, I said, holding his hand as he drove. All of us. We're going to figure this out. Yeah, Lucas said, smiling through his tears. We are. To be continued. If this chapter touched your heart, please subscribe and hit that like button. Comment below. How do you feel about Senator Brennan's change of heart? Should I continue with part 3, showing their journey to parenthood? What challenges do you think Adrian and Lucas will face next? Your support means everything. See you in the next chapter.
आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। मुस्कुरा के बात करती हो, आदतें खराब करती हो। ना दिखो बेताब लगता हूँ, आशिक बेहिसाब लगता हूँ। ऐसा नशा है तेरे दीदार का, आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। जिंदगी हसीन लगती है जब ये जालिम प्यार होता है। सांसों में सांस आती है जब तेरा दीदार होता है। नखरा है ऐसा मेरी सरकार का, आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। नखरा इसका टॉप पर आती है टिकटॉक पर, नैनो से है नैन मिलाती, लड़कों के है दिल जलाती, पिंडी में है चर्चा इसका, नीरा जितना खर्चा इसका। मैंने बोला इसको मेट्रो में बिठाऊंगा, कैपिटल ले जाऊंगा, F7 भी घुमाऊंगा, मोनाल भी दिखाऊंगा, सेंटोरस भी ले जाऊंगा। आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का। मौसमों की बेकरारी को आजमा के जान जाओगी, हिज्र की आजमाइश में एक दिन पहचान जाओगी। कहना है मेरे दिल बेकरार का, आशिक हूँ तेरा राजा बाजार का, लगता है मुझको नशा ये प्यार का।